Yo, what is up, everybody? Chris here from Fake Sports News, bringing you guys a super quick tier list where I will be ranking our top CDL teams in comparison to our bottom CDL teams. One team has to go in D by default, and S, A, B, and C are more negotiable. So let's get right into it. Kicking things off with our first team, the Boston Breach. I'm going to put them in the A tier. I know the Boston Breach are, as many, including Shotzi, called them recently the other day, scrim stars in the eyes of many in the community. But personally, I think the Boston is a really solid team, and we've only had one major in this season, so it remains to be seen how good of a land team they are. Obviously, Wake got sick, so that's why I have them in A. I think Boston is a really good team. I think they are one of the top 6 teams in this game in terms of just their performances and their capability. So that's why I have them in the A tier. I think top 6 stays in the A or B tier. But yeah, we'll talk about that later. So our next team, of course, Atlanta FaZe, and in my mind, they're the best S&D team right now. Of course, the map 5 against New York was suspect, right? A lot of lag and stuff. Took about 3 hours to complete that map, and yeah, I mean, not really a lot to take away from the game 5 necessarily, but they did beat the map 2, and they looked really comfortable in that S&D. So I think FaZe is the top S&D team right now. I think they are the best S&D team. They, of course, beat the Vegas Legion before they went on their 11-game S&D win streak, and that counts for a lot because Vegas is clearly the most dominant team in terms of consistency and form in the S&D game mode. So FaZe being the only team to beat them recently definitely says a lot in terms of the overall power rankings between those two. And they recently beat NYSL, who are obviously the consensus top 3 S&D team. They just won Major 1, and they've looked great in S&D in all 3 game modes. So beating NYSL was really what brought them over to the hump to put them in number 1 in my mind. Of course, next up is the Florida Mutineers. This might surprise a lot of you guys, but I think the Mutineers are actually... They're fringe A, I'll say B, just because their slang capability isn't there, but their S&D is lights out. So S&D is, obviously, as we know, 40% of each series, so it's very, very consequential in terms of just how well your team performs overall. If you can obviously steal a map 1, 4, or 3 somewhere along the way, then you are golden if you're a Florida Mutineers squad. They have a lot of Neslos under their belt. I think they have 3 this season. So most of their wins have come through 2, 3, 5, but the Mutineers are definitely a solid team, so they can kick up and win respawns if they play the game to the best of their ability. Obviously, Havoc drops 40, they win map 1, right? So Mutineers are fringe A team, but I have them as the top of B right now because they could break out at any point. Maybe with the Dave Patty substitution, they'll break out. We'll see, though. Of course, LA Guerrillas are our next team. I have them as an A tier team. I'm actually going to put them ahead of Boston just because the Guerrillas are currently sitting 6-0 in Hardpoint right now. Their S&D and control leaves a little bit to be desired at times, but you have to figure that those game modes are more reliant on team composition and just overall practice. So as this team comp really figures out how they like to play together, and they have a real team that's got some pretty clear roles and responsibility, I think that they'll be better in games 2, 5, and 3, of course. But as it stands right now, Hardpoint is their clear strength, and they're really blowing that up. So I think that naturally they'll improve, and they will become an S-tier team, but that's just a matter of time. Our next team is the LA Thieves, and as it stands right now, I have them as a C-tier team. I haven't liked what I've seen from the Thieves on LAN or online. They've just really not gotten a good grip on this game, and I'm not really sure what's going on. I think bringing in Capsule definitely gave them some mobility on the map, I'll say, that they were definitely lacking. But I just don't know that it's the change that they necessarily needed right now. So that's why I have them at C. Their performances have been less than stellar. Of course, with the Capsule fill-in, it's hard to say if that's going to be a catalyst for improvement for the Thieves or if it's just kind of a placebo because they have one of the best players in Challengers and one of the best amateur prospects filling in for Kenny. So it's really hard to say. But personally, I think the Thieves are in a position where a roster change would really help them. If the Capsule change was permanent, I feel like it would definitely help them. Kenny's just been out of sorts in this game. Same with Draza at times, but I feel like having an SMG that really knows how to put a lot of pressure on the map and makes a big impact is more important in this game, just the way it plays and the speed of it. So yeah, that's LA Thieves, mouthful there. And the London Royal Ravens, I'll put them also in C. Their performance all season has been super poor. They've won one series in Stage 2. I mean, yeah, it's just not a good look for the Ravens. I mean, I hope that this roster change of Paul, Scraps, Asim, and of course Nasty works out. I feel like it definitely gave them a lot of slang potential that they didn't have with Zero, but I'm just not too sure how they'll fare against really good teams. They beat Vegas, but Vegas is a pretty dysfunctional team at times because they don't have a facility. So online for them is pretty chalked, and they just don't have a fair shot, right? Like if they're not playing at the same facility, the players don't have a fair shot. So beating Vegas doesn't mean a lot. These guys are all playing from their houses, and yeah, that's pretty much the story. So our next team is New York Subliners. I have them as number one team in the game, so they're going to go S tier, above FaZe, and not really much of a explanation there. I mean, if you guys watch the matches, you know NYSL is just the best team in the game right now. They're currently sitting at, I believe, 11-4 in series count, so they're just top tier. Optic Texas. Where do I put Optic Texas? I actually put Optic Texas right now in the S tier. I think that they are the most dangerous team in the game, without a doubt, right now, just because no one really knows how they're going to play. They are the freshest, I would say, killer roster that we have right now. If FaZe or NYSL or Ultra had recently made a change, I would make them the most dangerous Titan. But as it stands right now, I think Optic Texas is definitely the team to beat. That might sound a little bit odd considering how good NYSL has looked. But Optic Texas, the early rumblings, I mean, what we've seen in the first couple matches with Dashy back in the mix in place of Scump, this team looks different and their S&D looks really, really good. Their fundamentals and the respawns, obviously, with Hook, Illy, and Shotzi complementing Dashy, that team is never going to have an issue slaying. It's just hard to not see this Optic Texas team at least winning one event with this roster. If they don't make it to top 4 at every event, right? If they can pull it together, I definitely see them winning one, if not two, if not possibly all the events this year. I just think this squad has unlimited potential with that roster comp. All those guys love playing together, so it's just hard to count them out, and they are really good at the game. Like, early eye tests, they pass it with flying colors, so we'll see how that goes. But as it stands, I definitively think Optic Texas is one of the top 4 teams in this game, without a doubt. Where they fall in that top 4, we need a few more matches to see. Sample set is just way too small right now. But as it stands, I think they're undeniable top 4. Minnesota Rocker. Interesting team. They're in a really rough spot, but I'll put them in the A tier. They 3-0'd FaZe last week. They handled business. Very few teams have the capability to 3-0 a team like FaZe, even on an off day. So that's why I think Minnesota Rocker are an A tier team. They just struggle with consistency and slang consistency specifically. But I think at a certain point, the coaching staff, as smart as they are, will figure out how to make them more consistent with their pressure on the map. Of course, our next team is the Seattle Surge. I'm going to put them in C tier as well. After making the Major 1 finals, they've really just looked awful online. And I know a lot of times people say, oh, online, with the server vetoes and all that, blah, blah, blah. But, online play does track very well to LAN. If your team is not showing good fundamentals and good teamwork, etc. online, then the chances of you really doing that on LAN are not great. Of course, Surge is definitely a LAN team like LA Thieves is, where they get tucked online and then they come to LAN and they fry sometimes. But I'm just seeing a lot of really, really bad mistakes from the Surge side. So I think before the Major, they will definitely go back and correct a lot of those mistakes. And I probably think they will fire off during the Major. But as it stands right now, I'm just ranking the teams based on Stage 2 online play. That's all we have to go on. So maybe Surge come out and surprise us. Maybe they come out and get flatlined. I don't know. Same for LA Thieves. But as it stands, based on their online play, I would say that these are, by default, our 3 worst teams right now. Toronto Ultra, S-tier team. I put them above Optic Texas and slightly below FaZe just because FaZe's S&D has always made the difference in their series against Toronto in the past. And I don't see that really being much of a difference this year unless Toronto drastically improves when they play FaZe in S&D. I just don't see them necessarily getting their number anytime soon. They're a great S&D team, obviously one of the top 4 S&D teams in my mind, but they just haven't been able to beat FaZe yet. So until that happens, then I would definitely rank FaZe above them. This is just the likelihood of who's going to win each series in my mind. And then our last team is the Vegas Legion. And right now I put Vegas Legion in the B tier with Florida Mutineers. You guys might be surprised to see both of these teams in the B tier. but I have liked what I've seen from them at different times. The Mutineers have shown signs of brilliance, as have the Vegas Legion, and honestly, I think at a certain point they will be able to pull it together, win more respawns more consistently, I'll say, in the clutch. And when that happens, I think that they will become an A or possibly an S tier team. Both of these teams have the markings of a great team, but there's just a couple things that are leading to this B tier ranking, right? So yeah, I think the CDL is much tighter than anyone ever wants to let on at times. We always want to say, oh yeah, we can definitively say that the London Royal Ravens are the worst team in the game, but you can't. There's 12 really competitive teams. Everybody cares about their team being competitive. Every team is competitive in every match they play. There are very few series where it's like, okay, we know they're going to get smoked. So, it's just a testament to how good the CDL has gotten in terms of making an ultra-competitive league, and it just shows how wide our talent pool is right now. There's so many players you can get from challengers to improve any of these teams, even the S-tier teams, right? Like, if you bring Beans onto New York in place of, let's say, Priesta, I don't know that New York could get worse. They might even be a little bit better, you could say. So it's just hard to say in today's Call of Duty era who a D-tier team would be. I mean, I don't want to put any of these teams in D-tier because even though the Surge haven't won a single series yet, they were in the grand finals at the last major. So I think we just have too much parity in the league to necessarily say a team is the clear-cut worst team in the league, because the Ravens were the clear-cut worst team in the league. And then they won their series against Vegas, who has been definitely a top-tier contender all year long. They got top 6 at the last event. Vegas has not really shown any signs of slowing down. Their hardpoints looked very good. They've just lost very close hardpoints. Their S&Ds looked lights out. They're on an 11-game win streak, but the Ravens beat them. So we just have a lot of parity in this league. That's why this tier list looks like this. I mean, it's just hard to say this seems bad. So sorry for the rambling at the end. I just had to kind of explain things and kind of bound the context a little bit and wrap it up for you guys. So yeah, speaking of wrapping it up, it's time to wrap it up, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're brand new, and I'll catch you guys on the channel, of course, for the next video tomorrow, that being a preview of what to expect going into that day's CDL matches. So yeah, guys, this is Chris from Fake Sports News, and once again, I'm signing off. Peace.